I told you it was CFL season. What is up, everybody? It is your local Ottawa fan, and I'm here today to talk to you about the 23-7 Ottawa REDBLACKS win over the Montreal Alouettes. No, okay, I'm not really here to talk about that because it's preseason football, okay? Some of you are probably tuning in and have only ever watched my PWHL content or my hockey content. Hi, welcome. First off, thank you for showing up. If you want to see more your local Ottawa fan, like, comment, subscribe. Don't worry, I get just as mad, if not more mad, football. So the same level of is gonna be there. Don't you worry. I've had my fair share of meltdowns over CFL football in my day. But some of you might be like, well, a preseason game still matters. It's different for football, in my opinion, because in hockey, like, there's not a lot of positions, Like, when you really break it down, fundamentally, there are 6 positions. Center, right wing, right defense, left defense, goaltending. That's it. The goaltender is going to have maybe a fight for the backup. Usually, you go in knowing who your number one is. You go into the seasons, not a huge question during the preseason games. If it is, then it's probably because you know who your starter and backup are going to be. And it's not really a fight for who's going to be the backup. You're going to see the 2 people who you're going to see throughout the season. You typically know your first line. You typically know your top pairing. There's, in my opinion, usually your top 6 is pretty solidified. I would say there's no more than 16 roles at most in a preseason that's actually available, where the coach would actually be like, hey, like, I might actually get you to come on the team. You go into your preseason game and you're a rookie and you're wowing and you're doing really, really well. And the coach is saying, maybe I'll put you in the lineup. Generally with hockey, there aren't a lot of spots to go around because, again, fundamentally, there's just 6 positions, and it's just how many players are you going to have at each position? How deep is your center going to be? How strong is your 4th line center going to be, and how strong is your 4th line center going to be compared to your first line? In football, there's a lot of positions. There's a lot more positions. There's a lot more. So you might have all of your receivers, no question. Oh, but your running back's a question. Maybe your backup running back is a question. You might know who your number 1 QB is, but your number 2, you aren't a little sure. I'd even argue the REDBLACKS are kind of in that position. And before you say, well, Dustin Crum, I think Dustin Crum is a specialist QB. He is really good at short yardage. I've even said that he might be better off as a running back, but, I get it. Have him as a QB, that's fine. But there's a lot more positions, which also means that there's a lot more experimentation of people who probably won't make the cut. But hey, throw them out for the preseason game because there's a lot of positions. There's a lot of different things you can try. The other reason is football is very much a game where a good coach and a bad coach make a huge difference because they run the playbook. They make the playbook. That is fundamentally football, the playbook, right? You could have the most talented players in the world. You could have a dream team. If you put me as their head coach, we aren't going to win a single game, right? You could give me Patrick Mahomes as starting quarterback. Heck, you could give me prime Tom Brady, prime Joe Montana as the starter and backup. My playbook's kind of small. I'm not an expert, okay? I can admit that. So, wouldn't matter. And coaches aren't going to show their hand in the preseason. Why would you show one of your trick plays in a game that literally doesn't matter? Save that for the regular season. You aren't going to see any fancy moves from the coach, maybe from the players. All of this to say, preseason games don't hold a lot of stock in terms of the result. Great, the Red Blacks won. I don't care if we lose by 30 in the preseason as long as we win by 3 in the regular season and postseason. We could, we got a game against Montreal at home. I'm going. I obviously want the Red Blacks to win. We could get our butts spanked. We could lose 100-0 for all I care. If we win by 1 against Montreal in the playoffs, I won't even care. So this video, and I did the same last year, this video is more going to be my thoughts going into next season. This preseason game is going to be a state of the team. And then my next one is going to be state of the league. And that one I'm going to have less of an expert opinion because, look, I follow the league. I get that there's 9 teams and it's not a lot, but it's also a lot. There's a lot of players moving around and, so in my next video, if you cheer for another team and I say that your team's not going to make the playoffs, I apologize. But what's the state of the Ottawa REDBLACKS? My opinion is, honestly, not just good, better than last season. I think that in the offseason, we have become a significantly better team. Significantly. And the reason I say significantly is because, first off, we took a ginormous step last season. We went from being not just a team that missed the playoffs, a bottom of the barrel team. I mean a stinky, dirty, gross team. We had a terrible football team. We went a whole season without winning at home. A whole season of fans going to the game saying, oh boy, I sure hope the Red Blacks win, and watching as they just simply did not. Week in, week out, without fail. We had a 4-season stretch of 4 wins or less in an 18-game season. That is atrocious. And last season, we jumped up to a 9-win team. We more than doubled that. We had a tie, so officially we were a winning team in the regular season. That's only the 3rd time it's happened in our history. Or 3rd or 4th. I think we got it. We were a winning team in 2017, right? Were we? In either case, we have not had a whole bunch of winning seasons. Even when we won the Grey Cup, the regular season itself, we went 8-9-1. It was not a winning season, and now that I think about it, I think 2017 might have been the same. Don't quote me on 2017. But I know for sure 2015, 2018, those were winning seasons. And so was 2024. That was a winning season. I expect 2025 to be a winning season. And that was a gigantic step. And now we're in the playoffs. We're a playoff team with playoff aspirations, and we scared Toronto. Through the first half, we were doing well. It looked like we might actually win and upset Toronto and go to Montreal. And then things kind of went badly. Now, it was an offense-heavy game, that game. But at the end, our defense just didn't show up, and Toronto's did. And the first thing I want to talk about is exactly that. Baron Miles gets fired from the Ottawa REDBLACKS shortly after their playoff elimination, which, first off, that was kind of a pleasant, not a pleasant surprise. I'm not happy that Baron Miles lost his job, obviously. But a pleasant surprise in the sense of it could have been easy to get complacent. We made the playoffs. Who cares that we lost? Who cares the reason that we lost? We didn't make the playoffs for a bunch, and then we did. Successful season. We did it. No. This team said, okay, we did it. We took that step into the playoffs. Now what's the problem? Now let's get better. Now let's go from a playoff team to a Grey Cup team. They actively made that choice because they could have gotten away with firing nobody. There would have been fans rumbling, but they could have just said, hey, look, we finally made the playoffs. We don't want to mess with this very, very fragile, perfectly constructed team and this perfectly constructed locker room environment. Oh, we can't change anything. And gotten eliminated in the East semifinals for, a bunch of seasons in a row. But no, right out the gate, we said, let's make some changes. Okay, what was one of our biggest problems in the playoff game that ended our season? Defense. Okay, get rid of the defensive coordinator. Yeah, fair enough. And then we go and we get William Fields, co-defensive coordinator for the very team that beat us in the playoffs. I mean, I cannot complain. 2-time Grey Cup champion, 3-time Grey Cup champion, but one was as a player. As a coach, as a defensive coordinator, a 2-time Grey Cup champion. Won the Grey Cup last season. And watch the Grey Cup. Their defense, oh my gosh, really good. And that's who we have as our defensive coordinator. At the end of our game, what buried us in the playoffs was pick sixes. Was, even though throughout the game, Toronto's defense was kind of rocky, especially through the first half. In the second half, they came out, they were way better, so they made those second half adjustments that you need to make. And then at the end of the game, to bury us, pick six, late in the game, good night. And the co-defensive coordinator is on our side this time. Love it. And the other moves that we made in the offseason, I think, are the types of moves that take a team from a playoff team to a contender, and it can be a small step. I think, the step we took last season from how bad we were to how decent we were is huge. So even though it's not going to be as big a step in terms of, how it looks and how it wows you, 4 wins to 9 wins, are you kidding? That's night and day. If we go from like 9 wins to, say, 12 or 13 wins, that's not a huge difference as compared to 4 to 9, But it makes a world of difference in terms of how competitive that team is going to be, not just in this season, but in future seasons. Good players want to go to good teams. If the Ottawa REDBLACKS keep getting bounced in the first round, we aren't going to be a desirable destination. If the Ottawa REDBLACKS make it to the Grey Cup, if the Ottawa REDBLACKS win the Grey Cup, a lot more players are going to say, oh, I want to go to Ottawa. I want to win a Grey Cup. I'm going to go there. And I think that the decisions that we made, the pickups that we got, are significant enough that they bring us from... So we went from here... No, we went from here. We were on the floor to here. Decent. I think we went from here to here. And winning the Grey Cup's right around here. Teams that win the Grey Cup are in this area. Now, if it's this season, we're going to win the Grey Cup. If it's this season, BC's going to beat us. But I think we, at the very least, are going to be competitive. I don't see us getting bounced in the Eastern semis this year. I think we've improved, and I think some other teams in the East have regressed enough for us to sneak in. And I mean, obviously, I'm going to personally, be biased and say we are the team to beat in the East. But I think we are a top 2 team in the East. I think that based off of, where we're starting this season, we're going to be really, really threatening. So what did we do? Well, let's talk about the bad first. And honestly, there's not too much. The major losses that I would say, I think there were 4. Technically 5. Damon Webb goes to Calgary. Damon Webb was really good for us, one of the best defenders on our team. And we were a team that was good defensively throughout most of the season, again, until the playoffs. Jalen Acklin, this one really hurts. Jalen Acklin was great for us. And it is a shame how his career ends. He retires due to injury. I was at the game when he got injured. It was scary. And, you know, I wish he could have come back. I wish we could have gotten another season of Jalen Acklin. Health comes first. Health always comes first. And if he said it's too much, it's too much. And hats off to you, Jalen. You had a wonderful career. Jalen Acklin had a great career, and I'm glad that some of that career was spent here in Ottawa. I think for us, that's a good what if. You know, if he was healthy, would it have helped push us over the edge against Toronto? Who knows? But, like I said, health comes first. And sadly, he had to make that decision. Brandon Dandridge gets released. I like Brandon Dandridge. I did. I get it. Has to happen. Dominic Rhymes released and also goes to Calgary. So Calgary takes Damon Webb and Dominic Rhymes. Dom Rhymes was really good for us. He was one of our best receivers. We have a good receiving core, which is something that hasn't always been true for us. I think it might have been a too many cooks situation where somebody had to go. The thing that makes this really suck is Nick Mardner goes down with injury before the season. It just happened. He's out for the season. And now it's like, oh, like if we didn't lose him, if Dom Rhymes was still on this team, honestly, I'd say no flaws, like flawless. But I think that now losing Dom Rhymes and then Nick Mardner getting injured makes me just a little concerned for our wide receivers. But our receiving core is still not that good. We have a lot of major keeps. I think our best offseason moves isn't just who we picked up, though it is, but it's also who we kept on our team. Santos Knox still on the team. Jacob Ruby still on the team. Nigel Romick still on the team. I could go through the list. One that I need to mention, Devontae Dedmon, who got a return touchdown in the preseason game that I'm technically talking about. And I get it, it's just a preseason game. That's still encouraging to see. It's still nice to see. And it was early in the preseason. It was like our first score. It was in the first quarter where, hey, you know, try to beat us, right? Montreal was up 1-0. Players that are wanting to prove themselves, wanting to show that they deserve a spot on the team, you know? Last thing you want to do is let a punt be returned 70 yards to the house and put your team in an early hole when you're fighting for a spot on the team. Nobody wants to do that. And Devontae Dedmon said, I'm going to do it anyways, and walks into the end zone. And he does actually walk into the end zone. Like, he just burns Montreal, puts on the Jets, that he can walk in by the end of it. If that's the Devontae Dedmon we got, we're fine. We're cooking. Devontae Dedmon, he's back. Dino Boyd, Cleon Lang. But the big ones, the big heavy hitters. Michael Wakefield is back. Lorenzo Malden is back. Justin Hardy, Drew Brown with an extension, and I think maybe our biggest return, technically second biggest, Adarius Pickett is back. And when he went down with injury, that's when our season started to kind of go off the rails. When Adarius Pickett is healthy, the team is winning football games with an improved defensive coordinator. And you know what else he did? He talked to a friend. He said, come to Ottawa. Who was that friend? Gino Lewis. Gino Lewis, you are an Ottawa REDBLACK. Welcome to Ottawa, Gino Lewis and William Stanback. The other player who I thought losing them was when the season went down the toilet, Raquel Armstead. Now, I do not blame the staff for getting rid of Raquel Armstead. He's not with Saskatchewan anymore. It was clearly off the field. That is why the decision was made. It was temper. It happens, especially with younger players. It happens, but you can't have that on your team. And I felt like we never properly replaced Raquel Armstead, which, when you get rid of somebody in the middle of the season, it can be hard to do. We replaced him with one of the best running backs in the league. We upgraded significantly, by the way. Like, we went from Raquel Armstead, decent running back, I believe it was his rookie season, he was doing good, to one of, if not the best running backs in the league. You want me to prove how good we improved? Okay, well, for people that we kept, Wakefield and Malden were tied in a three-way tie for first for most sacks in the league last season at 8 apiece, a combined 16 sacks. I guess some of them probably shared a sack. Nonetheless, that is daunting, and that is threatening. And if you are not an expert QB, that, I think, is going to make a difference. I'm going to be honest, there are some quarterbacks in this league who I don't think are going to be able to evade that combo. Forced fumbles, Wakefield had 3, and Davion Taylor also had 3. They had a 3-way tie for second most forced fumbles in the league. Most passing yards, we have a top 3 quarterback in Drew Brown, who had 3,959. He was 5 yards away from cracking $4,000. This is his first season as a bona fide starter, as like the starter. And we've extended him. Rushing yards, number 2 in the league, William Stanback, 1,175. Most receiving yards, Justin Hardy, second most receiving yards in the league last year, 1,343. By the way, William Stanback was one of just 3 people to get 1,000 rushing yards or more last season. Most receptions in the league, Justin Hardy was number 1, 97, 3 away from triple digits, and Geno Lewis was the only player last season to hit double-digit reception touchdowns. We went from being good to being depth up and down every single offensive statistical category and a good chunk of the defensive statistical categories as well. How could this get better? We would need our special teams to just lock in. We've got Lewis Ward. If only we had some kind of special teams coordinator who hiring them wouldn't just like be a good hire, but could be potentially like curse averting. In 2019, little known fact, the Ottawa REDBLACKS have had 3 coaches in all of their history. Paul LaPolice was our second coach. Didn't do too hot. Got fired rather quickly. Bob Dice is our current head coach, number 3. He was our interim after Paul LaPolice got fired in 2022, took over 2023. That season didn't go so well. And in his second full season as head coach, it was 2024, where he started to right the ship and got us back into the playoffs. What happened to our first coach? 2014 didn't go so hot. It's an expansion team. What do you expect? Second season, we made the Grey Cup. Third season, we won the Grey Cup. Fourth season, we made the playoffs. Not a super hot season. Got eliminated in the Eastern semis. But, you know what we did? In his 5th season, 2018, went 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. 5th season, back to the Grey Cup. Now, the Grey Cup didn't go so well that year, but still, we had 3 Grey Cup appearances in 4 years and won a Grey Cup. So in his 6th season, you would imagine that he'd have a lot of leash. We had a losing record and immediately out the door. And I thought, oh, that's the kind of thing that starts a curse. Like firing your coach. Like he was literally the coach, the only one. Coach Campbell is back, baby. Now, I know there's maybe a little bit of fear that this is like a Jacques Martin hire, hire the old coach that everybody loves, and then if the season goes off the rails, oh, okay, you're there to coach again. What? But I don't fully buy that. First off, he seems to have buy-in with Bob Dice. Second off, Bob Dice, this is his third season. He just got us back to competing. I have a tough time seeing us not competing. I give our offseason an A-. Not quite an A+. Again, if we had another wide receiver, like Geno Lewis is a huge pickup. If we had like one other pickup, doesn't even have to be amazing. Just like good. Just like strong. You know, like Braylon Addison's back. Is he going to win MOP? No. Is he a good wide receiver that you want on your team who can get you a clutch first down or clutch touchdown? Yeah. If we had just another pickup, I would have given this an A or an A+. But nonetheless, I think this was an A- offseason. And now, drumroll please, what is my expectation? My expectation for this season is a playoff win and hosting a game in the postseason. Whether it is hosting the East semis, winning and making the East final, or hosting and winning the East final and making the Grey Cup. Let me be clear. Hosting the East final and losing? You gotta win a playoff game this year, and I think we're capable of that. I do think that we might be the most threatening team in the East, but I'm going to get more into that in the next video. For those of you who are, you know, just showing up the first time for CFL videos, hello. Glad to have you. Trust me, it's fun. I'm going to break down the league a bit more in the next one for some potential newcomers. So if you are like, I don't know, maybe, please, I urge you, watch the next video. I'm going to explain why you should watch the CFL. And as always, go Ottawa, go!